Language is my playground, and neurodivergence is my lens. I am Hiba Bayat, the neurodivergent linguist, coach, and supervisor. Around here, we explore words, worlds, and wiring with curiosity, compassion, and the occasional tangent. Because growth is messy, meaning is layered, and shift really does happen. Hello everyone, this is Hiba. Welcome to the Neurodivergent Linguist podcast. Today I want to talk to you about something that has been occupying my thinking for quite some time. This episode is inspired by a presentation I recently delivered at Convergence 2026. It was hosted by the Centre for Translation Studies at the University of Surrey. The presentation was called The Cognitive Frontier Toward a Neuro-Inclusive Framework for Human-AI Integration in Multilingual Communication. Now don't worry, this isn't going to be a conference presentation. This is the Neurodivergent Linguist version, the plain English version. The version where we explore what these ideas might mean in everyday life. Because the question at the heart of this episode is actually quite simple. When we talk about AI, we often ask, is it accurate? Is it efficient? Does it save time? Does it improve productivity? These are all important questions. But what if we are missing another question? What if we asked, what does working alongside AI actually feel like? When we talk about accessibility, most people think about language. Can someone read the information? Can they understand it? Can it be translated into another language? Those questions are incredibly important. As an interpreter and translator, they are at the heart of what I do. But I would argue that there's another layer of accessibility that often goes unnoticed: cognitive accessibility. In other words, can your brain actually engage with the information without becoming overwhelmed? I often think of accessibility as an iceberg. Above the surface sits the visible part: language, translation, interpreting, the words themselves. But beneath the surface sits something much larger: attention, working memory, processing speed, emotional regulation, task management, cognitive stamina, executive functioning. And if those systems become overloaded, accessibility can fail even when the language itself is perfectly clear. Have you ever read an email 3 times and still not known what to do next? Have you ever understood every word on a page but felt completely overwhelmed by it? Have you ever opened an app that technically worked perfectly but left you mentally exhausted? That's where cognitive accessibility comes in. Many of us use executive functioning skills every day without thinking about them. Planning, organizing, prioritizing, starting tasks, switching attention, managing emotions, holding information in mind, making decisions. These are all invisible processes that help us navigate the world. And when those processes become overloaded, even relatively simple tasks can start to feel surprisingly difficult. This is one reason why cognitive accessibility matters. It's not just about whether information exists, it's about whether people have the cognitive resources available to engage with it. Now, here's where AI enters the story. I want to be clear, this is not an anti-AI episode, far from it. I use AI regularly. Many neurodivergent people do. In fact, I often describe AI as a kind of cognitive prosthetic, not in a medical sense, but as a form of external support. AI can help us break down large tasks, generate ideas, create structure, retrieve information, support memory, and reduce the overwhelm that often comes with facing a blank page. For many people, these tools are genuinely helpful. They can reduce executive burden and free up mental energy for more meaningful work. But there is another side to the story. One of the concepts I introduced in the presentation is something I call the monitoring tax. Imagine you use AI to draft a report. At first glance, it feels as though you've saved time. And perhaps you have. But then comes the checking. You verify, you monitor, you evaluate, you audit, you compare, you ask yourself, is this accurate? Did it miss anything? Does this make sense? Can I trust it? The work hasn't disappeared. Some of it has simply changed form. The effort has shifted from producing content to supervising content, and that supervision requires attention and judgment, mental energy. Over time, that can become surprisingly tiring. That hidden cognitive cost is what I describe as the monitoring tax. Closely related to this is another concept I discussed called algorithmic anxiety. Unlike the monitoring tax, which is about the work of checking, algorithmic anxiety is about uncertainty. It's that nagging feeling that sits in the background, the small voice asking, what if it's wrong? What if I've missed something? Can I really trust this? It's a little bit like leaving the house and suddenly wondering whether you locked the front door. You probably did. But now part of your brain keeps returning to the question. The more important the task, the stronger the uncertainty can become. Sometimes the task itself is not the only thing consuming mental energy. The uncertainty surrounding the tool becomes a cognitive load in its own right. Another idea that emerged from this work is what I call the prompting paradox. AI often tells us, tell me what you need, describe your problem, write a prompt, ask a question. And that sounds wonderfully simple. Until you realize that identifying what support you need is itself a skill. Many people struggle not because they don't have the answer, but because they don't know where to start. They don't know how to organize their thoughts. They don't know how to translate a vague sense of overwhelm into a clear request. In other words, the very people who may benefit most from support are not always the people who find it easiest to access that support. That's the paradox. The support exists, but accessing it may require the very skills that are currently under strain. So what might a better future look like? For me, the answer lies in neuro-inclusive design. Design that supports human cognition rather than competing with it. Design that reduces unnecessary complexity. Design that preserves mental energy. Design that offers structure without overwhelm. Design that recognizes that people think differently. And here's the important part. This doesn't only benefit neurodivergent people. Historically, many accessibility innovations end up helping everyone. Take curb cuts, for example. They were introduced to support wheelchair users. Yet today they also help parents pushing prams, travelers wheeling suitcases, delivery drivers, cyclists, and many others. Or consider captions and transcripts. Originally developed to improve accessibility for deaf and hard of hearing individuals, they are now used by millions of people every day. People use them in noisy environments, in quiet environments where they don't want to disturb others, when learning a new language, when following technical content, or simply when they process information more effectively through both reading and listening. The same principle applies to neuro-inclusive design. If we create AI systems that reduce unnecessary cognitive friction, preserve mental energy, and support different ways of thinking, we are not only supporting neurodivergent users, we are creating better experiences for everyone. So perhaps the question isn't simply, how can AI become more powerful? Perhaps the more important question is, how can AI become more cognitively accessible? How can it support human thinking? How can it reduce unnecessary burden? And how can it help us work in ways that are not only productive, but sustainable? Because the future of accessibility may not only be about language, it may also be about cognition. And perhaps the future of AI should be judged not only by what it produces, but how it supports the people who use it. Or to put it in another way, AI should support cognition not compete with it. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care. You have been listening to the Neurodivergent Linguist, where words, worlds, and wiring meet. I am Hiba Bayat, the Neurodivergent Linguist, coach, and supervisor. I hope this episode left you a little more curious, a little more kind to your brain, and a lot more you. Until next time, keep noticing, keep learning, and remember, shift really does happen.